Congressman Steve King for the fine state of Iowa joins us. He is a Ted Cruz supporter, and the argument seems to be that maybe, Congressman, your candidate got out of town, so not to be embarrassed in town. He's focusing on Pennsylvania, where he's polling at least competitively, and that is an odd state where 50-plus delegates go off to Cleveland uncommitted. So maybe he can muster something there, but the sense is he won't hear. Do you think in the end, though, that New York values comment came back to bite him in the hiney?
Well, it certainly was a tool that Donald Trump used, was the New York values comment, but we should be reminded that that was a comment that Donald Trump himself made about the contrast between New York and Iowa values. And so Ted Cruz was on the mark when he said that, and then, of course, that got changed along the way with the dialogue that was tied into Donald Trump. But we shall see what happens in New York tonight.
By that? My colleague Maria Bartiromo brought that up in a Fox Business debate. I think you were a little offended by that at the time, right? But the issue was that forever typecast him as sort of making a slap at New Yorkers, and that he couldn't and hasn't recovered from that, at least here.
But it was Donald Trump that said that perhaps he'd have a pro-life position in 1999 if he'd had Iowa values instead of New York values. That was what Ted Cruz referenced, and then I've watched as the dialogue and the narrative has been transformed, sometimes from what was truth and fact into what turns out to be a fiction that people believe. And I kind of think that's where this is now.
So do you think, Congressman, I understand, but the better part now for at least the senator is, let's just get out of New York, you know, move on here. But if there's a possibility that he performs dismally tonight, let's say even finishes third tonight, do you think he's wounded going into these big primaries next week?
Oh, I don't think he's wounded. Not any more than anybody that didn't win Ohio except John Kasich would be wounded. I mean, this is Donald Trump's home state. And so I think that you'll see some Cruz support upstate. And I think that maybe Kasich has done better there than what we might have thought he would have. But when you get into Pennsylvania, and you've got to focus your time and your energy where it pays off. I mean, I noticed that, you know, for example, I gave a speech in New York a few years ago where I gave them the whole 9 yards of conservatism, the full spectrum of constitutional conservatism. And when I was done, I thought I offended everybody in the room, but the rabbi's wife stood up and said, I had forgotten what I believed when I came to this town 20 years ago. I believed all the things you told me, but I have no one to talk with. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to start all over again, and I'm going to start talking about those constitutional values. I think that's a part of, that's New York, that's the city at least. Yeah. Upstate will agree with Cruz on some of this.
All right. A lot of good delis, though. I should remind you of that. Yes. Congress, it's always a pleasure. Thank you very much.